We look at the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know, including Drew McIntyre injured for real, Becky was robbed after a new leak surfaced, Brock Lesnar breaks character after winning, is the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble at risk, and much more. Now, our first story looks at Drew McIntyre injured for real. Now, our top story today takes a look at some unfortunate news relating to a serious injury to a top WWE superstar. Last night's Day 1 pay-per-view saw Drew McIntyre defeat Madcap Moss in singles competition. Later in the show, WWE aired a backstage segment which saw Moss and Baron Corbin attack Drew McIntyre. They would wrap a chair around his neck and proceed to smash it with a piece of lighting equipment. Now, according to a report published by PW Insider, this angle was done because Drew is actually legitimately hurt and it looks like he needs some time away from WWE programming. Now, Drew has been having consistent problems with his neck for a number of weeks, and WWE have insisted that the former champion undergo tests on his neck to make sure that there's nothing too serious going on. Drew McIntyre has been one of the WWE's top stars over the past 2 years, and he was recently pulling double duty at live events to make up for absent talent. Now, according to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer Radio, before Drew got hurt, there were creative plans for him to enter into a feud with Universal Champion Roman Reigns. Meltzer stated, "I don't think anyone believed for a second Madcap Moss was going to beat Drew McIntyre. It's funny because with Drew McIntyre being hurt, they could have done it, but they didn't even dare to do it. I wouldn't have either because at the end of the day, the plan is still supposed to be Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns at some point. So we shouldn't be losing to Madcap Moss, even if he's going to be hurt. Hopefully the injury is not too bad." Now, we at Wrestlelamia wish Drew a speedy recovery. Next up, Becky Lynch's WrestleMania match revealed. Becky Lynch was successful in her defense of the Raw Women's title at the Day 1 pay-per-view last night. She went 1v1 with Liv Morgan, and following a victory, it looks like Becky will walk into WrestleMania as Raw Women's Champion. According to Dave Meltzer, Becky will most likely be facing Bianca Belair at WrestleMania in a rematch from SummerSlam last year. Their match at SummerSlam was controversial as it saw Becky return as a heel to squash Bianca in a matter of seconds. WWE have done a poor job in handling Bianca since her title loss, and a match and a potential victory over Becky at WrestleMania could be the best move possible. Meltzer stated in The Observer, "They booked it not to kill Liv Morgan off and to go again, because I don't know this, but I think the Mania match is probably Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch. So they need something to take time because they don't want to do that match before Mania if that is your big Mania match. So you have to keep this thing going for as long as you can." Now, if this is indeed the plan, the WWE is aiming towards WrestleMania. It's entirely possible that Bianca wins the Women's Royal Rumble this month. Now, this would mark 2 consecutive Rumble victories for the former Women's Champion. Are you guys interested in seeing Becky face Belair at WrestleMania? Let us know in the comments down below. Next up, Johnny Knoxville announced for the Royal Rumble. Now, the first official entrant for the 2022 Royal Rumble has been revealed, and it's none other than Jackass star Johnny Knoxville. In an Instagram video, Knoxville announced his participation in the annual match before making some unflattering comments about Biggie and Roman Reigns. Knoxville captioned the video by saying, "I have a big announcement that I've been dying to get off my chest. I spent a lot of times over the holiday thinking about how I wanted to start off my 2022, and I decided I want to do it kicking ass and taking names, and the best way to do that I feel is making a run for the Rumble. That's right, WWE's Rumble. Training starts today. Not that I will need a lot of it because I've seen the WWE's current roster and it's laughable to think anyone can throw me over the top rope. Laughable." And Knoxville was actually said to be part of a WWE pay-per-view back in 2007. Knoxville, along with other Jackass cast members, were going to face Umaga at the SummerSlam pay-per-view. However, due to the Benoit tragedy, the cast members decided to distance themselves from the WWE. Next up, Biggie was robbed as a leak surfaced. As the Day 1 pay-per-view saw a last-minute change of plans due to Roman Reigns testing positive for COVID-19, there has been speculation from fans on social media in relation to what the initial plans for the pay-per-view were. Once the pay-per-view had finished airing, WWE on Fox tweeted out a graphic which revealed the results of the match. In the graphic, it stated that Biggie successfully defended his WWE title in a fatal 4-way. However, above this text was an image of Brock Lesnar. Now, was this an innocent mistake, or has it indicated that WWE's initial plans for the pay-per-view itself was for Biggie to retain his WWE title in the fatal 4-way match, and with Lesnar's graphic being on the results post, it's entirely possible that Lesnar was supposed to defeat Reigns to win the Universal title. Next up, Becky Lynch challenges WWE Hall of Famer. Beth Phoenix made her grand return to WWE programming last night at the Day 1 pay-per-view, assisting Edge in his victory over The Miz. Now, although it's unclear if this means Beth is going to make an in-ring return, a certain WWE superstar has already challenged the Hall of Famer to a match. Following Beth's return, reigning Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch took to Twitter to challenge Beth to a one-on-one match. Becky tweeted, "So, wanna fight sometime?" Fans may recall that Becky had an infamous segment with Edge back at SmackDown 1000 in 2018, and this led to fans wanting to see Becky vs Beth, but sadly it never happened. WWE has a number of options for a Becky vs Beth rivalry, and one option could see Becky team with her husband Seth Rollins to take on Beth and Edge. Edge and Rollins had one of the most heated rivalries of 2021, this would act as a natural progression of the feud. However, I don't think we've seen the last of the Miz vs Edge feud, which could involve the two wives facing off in a mixed tag match. But would you guys like to see Becky face Beth? Let us know in the comments down below. Next up, the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble in serious jeopardy? Thanks to recent releases, WWE has an extremely limited women's roster on the main roster. And according to Dave Meltzer, this puts the 2022 Women's Royal Rumble at risk. Meltzer stated, "You really don't need two 1-hour pay-per-view matches on the same show, but the whole thing that it's gotta be equal and it's gotta be 30, I'm pretty sure it's gotta be 30. The other thing is that when it's a bunch of people that the fans don't know, kinda makes the match dead. 20 would be 30 on that match, for sure, but for traditional reasons, I'm relatively certain that they're gonna go 30. Alongside the WWE could be dependent on using stars from NXT as well as legends to make sure the match takes place. WWE releasing so many women between 2020 and 2021 has finally caught up to them, and hopefully the annual matchup can go ahead as initially planned. And finally, Brock Lesnar breaks character after winning. Our final story today looks at a wholesome encounter between a fan and new WWE Champion Brock Lesnar. Lesnar has been enjoying a run as a babyface as of late, and last night, after Lesnar captured his 6th world title, Lesnar broke character by shaking hands and posing with a fan for photos and selfies. Lesnar seems to be having great fun as a babyface. He's been cutting promos and has been involved in a number of acclaimed comedy segments. The lucky fan who managed to get a photo with Lesnar was lucky enough to have a video of his encounter shared by WWE's official Twitter account, which is great to see.